let's shift gears just slightly. Talk to me about the relationship with Iran. Talk to me about Iran's role in all of this.
Yeah, Iran is the spider at the center of the web. It has had a very patient and very clever strategy when it's come to Israel as well as the U.S. in the Middle East. Iran wants to drive the U.S. out of the Middle East so it could focus on defeating Israel, and it spread its influence in the region. If you look at this in the 1980s, Iran worked, helped form Hezbollah. That became its prime proxy. Then it started flirting with the established Palestinian terror groups. That has increased. Then after the U.S. invasion, it started working, increasing its support of Shia militias in Iraq, and built some very, very powerful militias in these areas. These militias were responsible for killing over 600 Americans in Iraq during an American presence there and conduct attacks against American servicemen to this day. As the Islamic State gained strength in Syria, the Iraqi militias and Hezbollah moved into Syria as well and expanded their influence there. At the same time, the Houthis were courted that's the militia in Yemen, were courted by the Iranians as well. And now the Houthis are a militia with the most advanced weaponry, anti-ship ballistic missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, advanced drones, underwater and above water drones that they've used effectively to blockade the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The U.S. part of it as well, but they're having trouble militarily as well dealing with the Houthis. And the Iranians put this all together. They call this the axis of resistance. What part of the problem Israel is having here is it's fighting Hamas, it's fighting Hezbollah, it's fighting Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but it's not going after the real leader here or the core of the problem, and that is Iran. Iran has not been made to pay a price for organizing these militias. Iran has built up a sort of you could call it, plausible deniability. Everyone knows what's happening, how Iran is supporting this, but the international community looks the other way and says, "Oh, this is an Israel-Palestinian problem. This is an Israel-Hamas problem." Ultimately, it's an Israel-Iran problem, and Iran pays little to no price for directing attacks on Israeli soil. And until that changes, you're going to continue to see that noose tighten.
Yeah, it does seem like talking about the Iranian regime's, culpability for all of this, building a network, a ring of proxies, terror groups, with the objective of eventually destroying Israel, which is a stated objective, certainly of Iran, and of these proxy groups. But it seems like that's the third rail, certainly for the current U.S. administration. They don't want to discuss this. They don't want to talk about it. So I agree with you. It does seem like, by saying we're going to go after Hamas, we're going to try to, eradicate them, or we're going to try to degrade them to the point where they can't govern. And then the U.S. steps in and says we're going to bring in the Palestinian Authority to govern in Gaza somehow. Or then we're going to take on Hezbollah up north. It seems like you're basically just putting a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound here, right? You're not dealing with, as you point out, the real problem. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see a U.S. administration, whether it's the current one or any future, for whatever reason, thinking that that's a good idea, right? It's always going to be kicking the can down the road by trying to come up with individual, not even solutions, but temporary ceasefires or Band-Aids for these various proxy groups.
That's absolutely correct. And you described this perfectly. Policy elites on both sides of the aisle have grown accustomed to kicking the Iran can down the road. It's and even as Iran supported attacks and sabotaged U.S. efforts in Iraq, right? The militias were created to help drive up the costs and get us out of Iraq. It worked. and Iraq is essentially an Iranian satrapy at this point. Um, the Iranians supported, people don't believe this. I testified in a case, I was an expert witness in a case where we proved in federal court that Iran provided the Taliban and Al Qaeda with safe haven, cash, intelligence support, training, weapons in order to drive the U.S. out of Afghanistan. Iran's motivation was to give us a black eye, to defeat us in the region. And Iran just doesn't like the U.S. on its borders and doesn't like friendly regimes, American friendly regimes on its border. So we allowed Iran to help. Of course, in Afghanistan, Pakistan also played a role in that, probably a more significant role, but Iran's role was, no less important. We've we've accepted that. And not only have we accepted Iran playing a role in killing American servicemen and destroying our key policies, we give them money. We negotiate with them. We try to, work a nuclear deal with them. There has been zero repercussions for Iran for doing what is done not only to Israel, but to the United States. And so, of course, Iran is going to keep ratcheting up the pressure. They're going to do it until they have to pay a price. I'll give an example. There is an intelligence ship that plies the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, providing intelligence on, and it's Iranian, for the Houthis to launch their ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones to direct those attacks. It floats to this day. It's such an easy target to just take out. But we can't even do that. We play defense against the Houthis. Meanwhile, the Houthis sink ships and force ships to most of the shipping to go divert around the Horn of Africa. This is, we're not even, I'd say they're playing chess and we're playing checkers, but it's almost like we're not even playing the game at all.